Hello and welcome back. So, today we are going to continue on with our online learning classes. So, yesterday we were looking at establishment options and also competition with inside the business, in particular, looking at the types of monopoly that might be encountered inside the business world. Now, today we are going to be looking at market influences and how they can impact upon us trying to start up a business. Now, sorry for any noise that you might encounter. I'm currently sitting in the middle of the library um, with all the distractions that might bring with other teachers. So don't worry if you just hear Madame Suray's voice suddenly popping in. She's probably just saying hello. So let's start this off. So obviously, to get started here, we need to know what are the market influences that we need to know for preliminary business studies. So, key market considerations that influences the establishment of an SME are where the market is, its location, where it's sold at market or what is sold at market, goods and or services, and for what price the product will sell. Okay, so if you're basically just going to jot these down into one or two words each, it's price, goods and or services, and location. Now, I've told you a couple of times, but I really believe it's important to emphasize this. You need to know what your syllabus says. Okay? If you know what your syllabus says, you will have a really good chance of doing your preliminary examination, but also your HSC examination. So, when we're looking at market influences, if you can just remember price, goods, and or services and location, you're about halfway there to any sort of question that they might be actually asking you. Okay, so it's really important that you sort of just hammer down upon that fact. Don't get distracted by any of the outliers. All they're going to do is ask you for more detail about that. Okay, so we'll go through a bit more detail about what each one of these are. So when we're looking at price, okay, now pricing is a very important decision entrepreneurs make. Prices that are too high can drive customers away. Meanwhile, prices that are too low reduces profitability and may leave the customer the impression that its products and or services are of inferior quality. So it's sort of a very strange thing where you have to straddle the middle line between, okay, do I want a really high price product that's going to leave me with a very large profit? Okay, but might actually drive a lot of customers away because they're not going to see the value of actually paying for that high product or high price product? Or do I go for a low price product? I can sell lots of it. The profit margin will be very small. And it's also the risk of when people see that it's really low, they just go, oh, has this actually got any quality to it? Or is it just a really cheap price made in China sort of thing? Okay, so you have to really balance on that fine line. So, to determine the most appropriate price, entrepreneurs should consider these five things. Okay, the total cost of producing the product or service. Okay, so when we're thinking about this, uh, if you've got a product that's very expensive to make, obviously the price of that finished product is going to go up considerably as well. So, you want to be able to reduce the cost of making that product without reducing the quality of it. Okay, now you should also be considering the pricing of competitors and their competitive behavior. So, if your product is priced considerably higher than your competitors, and it can offer no real discernible advantage or advantage that's worth having, then you're going to lose out to your competitors because, of course, why would you buy something that's got a higher price on it when you can just get it cheaper and it still does the exact same thing? The perceived price quality interaction of the product or service, which is what we were talking about before, where people generally expect the higher the price is of something, the better quality it is. So, a really good example of that is fashion brands like Gucci, for example. When we see Gucci, we know that it's a high price product and that we expect good quality from it. And this is also going to do with something like brand recognition as well. Certain brands will just expect quality with high price. Apple is actually another good example of that, where I know that I can buy something from Windows or Microsoft for a relatively cheaper price than a Mac. However, the Mac has this illusion of prestige, privilege, and also reliability. Whether that's the case, you can sort of choose for yourself. Okay. You also have the market demand for the product or service. So, of course, the more in demand something is, the more its price is going to go up because there's going to be a shortage of it. Okay, so if there's a really high demand for your product, it's going to drive that price up. And you also have a desired image for the product or service. Okay, so whether you want it to be perceived as this sort of high-end product or a product that gets the job done for a minimal amount of cost. Now, for goods and or services, it may sound like a simple thing to say, but it's incredibly important to be familiar with the goods/services your business will be selling. Customers will expect you to know every detail about it, and you will have very few excuses to give them if you don't. And this is often one that a lot of people fall into the trap where they go, oh, it will do this, this, and this, but then they don't learn anything else about their product, and then customers will routinely ask you questions that you didn't think that you would get, and they will want answers. And if you can't give them answers about the product that you have made and that you are selling, you are going to look very foolish, and it immediately shatters the confidence that your customer has in buying your product. Okay? You should know almost every single detail and facet about your product and or service. Okay? So when you're testing your familiarity or knowledge of your product, you might break it down into 7 key parts. And if you can sort of talk about all 7 of these key parts, you're doing a really good job, and that you have a very familiar knowledge of your product or service. So, for example, what's the level of demand for your product and service? How much do people want it? What's the target market? Who are you trying to go for in the selling of this? What are the legal aspects? Are there any legal problems or issues that might pop up because of your product or service? What's the cost of providing the product? How much is it going to cost to make? What are your product details? What sort of little intricacies in your product? What's it made out of? Things like that. Who else is also on the market? What are they selling? How's yours better than theirs? And what is its stage in the product life cycle? And the product life cycle is very similar to looking at the business life cycle. And we'll look at it a bit more in depth when we do it again this year and also for year 12. But basically, every product or service has an expiry date. You just have to know which stage your product is actually in. So the following page will give you an idea of how you can actually break these down. So, for example, it breaks down target market and legal aspects here. So, for example, we're looking at target market and we go, okay, so are we looking to sell to a family or a single person sort of thing? What occupation are we looking to sell to? What location, what gender and sex, what age? Okay. And then we look at the breakdown of the legal requirements. What's the safety requirements? What's the licenses needed? Do we need warranty? If so, how much and to what extent? Okay. And all of these should be really broken down if you're attempting to offer a new product or service, because it will show that you have an in-depth knowledge of that product, good, or service. Now, the last one is location. So location as a market consideration is choosing where the business will be located and how it will attract its customers and future sales. Okay, this is an expensive decision for any business. Choosing whether to be in a shopping centre, strip mall, online only, at home, or a combination of these locations, a business owner must justify the expense which is attached to any location. Because, of course, when we're looking at location and thinking back to our sort of marketing exercises, location will directly impact your visibility, the visibility of your business. So ideally, you want a place where visibility is utmost, where you can get pretty much advertising just from people walking past your business. So things like train stations in the middle of shopping centres and all that, this is a great place to get visibility, and you're going to be paying the most for this place because you are paying for that visibility. Okay, you can set up a small little shop in a lot of different areas, But if you're setting up a shop in the middle of a residential area, in the middle of a suburb, well, nobody's really going to know about your shop besides the people that live around that area. And even then, they might not go to it because it's not next to all of those other shops, which gives them the convenience. Because when you think about it, when you're doing your own shopping, very rarely will you or your parents and guardians go into the shops for one specific thing. Usually, you've gone into the shops to do your groceries, and on that way, you've sort of gone, oh, I'll look into this store and I'll look into this store. And that's why you pay so much to be in a shopping centre, because people are already attracted to go to that shopping centre, usually for doing their groceries, and they're going to be attracted to your shop along the way. So you pay big, big bucks to be able to be in that shopping centre. I would advise you to have a look at some of the rent on the stores that are sitting in West Point, Blacktown. They are truly high, thousands of dollars every single week. So what I want you to do, and I'll give you 2 minutes for this, okay? Write down one way you think location for businesses have changed in the last 20 years. So I'll just get your teacher to stop me for 30 seconds. They can give you 2 minutes to work on, and I'll come back to you. So, of course, location has changed quite considerably when we're looking at business in Australia and also the world. Okay, and some of you I think would have got this answer. Okay, online activity. In the past 20 years, there has been a real push away from actual physical locations when you're doing your shopping. And for your generation in particular, it's quite an obvious thing. I know for myself in particular, I do quite a bit of online shopping because I hate going into the shops myself. So I will order online from stores. Eventually, in a couple of days, it stops by my house with a package. Or the new really popular one is ordering in your food. Now, when I was young in the late 90s, even in the late 90s, ordering your food to go to your house was quite a novel experience. You used to pay quite a lot of money to do it. Very few people did because of the cost. It was sort of really only something you did if you were particularly lazy or you had money to spare. Okay, so this was something that was quite different. In the past 10 years, however, getting food delivered to your house has really taken off. Back in when I was a kid, it was really only pizzas that used to be delivered to your house. They were the only ones with an infrastructure. Now you can get almost any single thing possible. Okay, and this is one way. It's really changed, and the location of these shops have changed as well. For example, there are some food stores on Uber Eats that don't actually operate as food stores. So there's one store in particular, I'm thinking of it, Uber Eats, it's called Lord Volderburger. Okay, basically a big burger joint. Now, what's special about it is there's actually no physical restaurant that you can walk in and order a burger. You can only order it off Uber Eats, which probably means it's being done in a small little kitchen area. They've got all the Uber Eats drivers just coming in and picking it up, and that's it. But think about the location costs of that building. Okay, that business now does not have to pay for a massive space and a restaurant. All they have to pay for is a kitchen, and their orders are constantly being delivered to the outside. So they've saved that massive amount, but they've got the saving on location, but they've still got the visibility through Uber Eats. So it's an amazing change in the past 20 years. And we can look forward to that changing more, as we'll probably see shopping centres become less and less paramount or important to our society as more and more people just sort of do the online shopping method. So when we're looking at location, these are the factors that influence the choice of a business's location. As you can see, we've got quite a number of them. Okay, so for example, availability of support services, visibility to passing trade, access to transport, zoning. Now, zoning is an important one which you might not know what it means. So per law, you're actually only allowed to set up shops and industries in very specific zones or region inside cities. Okay, this is what zoning is. So certain areas inside cities are, for example, zoned as residential. You can only ever build houses there. Meanwhile, other zones are zoned as commercial, meaning that you can put shops there, and other zones would be industrial. The reason we have this is to stop overflow of different industries and activities going into each other. So, for example, you wouldn't want a big coal factory right next door to your house. The smell and pollution would be absolutely horrible. It would be awful to live there. So what do? They zone entire areas to be those industrial areas so it doesn't bother residential areas. Same with commercial. You don't want to be living oftentimes right next to the shop because it causes too much traffic, there's no parking available. So you have to be zoned to be an actual commercial area. Okay. The other things that you can think of is size of required space, available utilities. Do you have your gas, electricity, and water all available in that location? Is your target market going to be next to you? Proximity to suppliers. So all the things that you need to run your business, are your suppliers close enough to actually give them to you? And are you going to rent or buy your location? Most places do actually rent their facilities because it is incredibly expensive to buy a location to put your shop on or your business. It's prohibitively expensive because of those zoning laws. Okay, so what I want you to do now is you have the rest of the lesson to complete the Google form that you can find attached to the Google Classroom post that gave you this link. Okay, so everyone should finish that. When that's done, it should mark automatically all of the multiple choice questions, and I'll make sure I put up at some point the answers to any of the short and long responses ones. Okay, so that's it. Smash all that out, and I will be back for the next lesson.